Emotions play a very vital role in our daily lives. They can often disrupt our path, they can interrupt our consistency, and throw us for a loop. So it's important to understand how emotions happen. It's also important to understand that there are triggers that can take us to a different place that's beyond what is currently happening. So today we're going to talk about emotional triggers and how we can handle them, how we can identify them so that we can remain consistent. Hey, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. Welcome back to my 100-day walk to consistency. Today we're talking about a very important topic. Each day we're building another part of the puzzle. We're putting another puzzle piece in that will help us on our way to making sure that we're setting ourselves up for success. Welcome to day number 24. We'll talk about this. Before we jump in, I want to remind you that consistency is the key that will help you set yourself up for success. So let's jump in and we'll see you on the walk. So we're talking about emotional triggers. I guess the first question to understand is that there is a difference between an emotional trigger and stress. Yesterday we talked about stressful events and how to manage those. Well, stress is a general term that's used to define any demand or any threat that the body senses. And it reacts with a stress response. An emotional trigger, on the other hand, can fall under a stress, but it really is a kind of automatic process that happens as something, some condition, some circumstance, some word, some sight, some offense, sometimes even, takes us to a different place. Often when we are triggered, what is actually happening is we're no longer in the moment where the trigger is happening, because the trigger connects to something in our past. The trigger connects us to something that is typically unresolved. And so what we're responding to often is really not what just happened. We're not responding to the situation as it is unfolding in front of us. We're actually responding as though we were back during the time when the initial insult happened. And so a trigger is that connection, that thing that connects us, that almost time warp, if you will, that takes us from our current space into a different space. And that is sometimes difficult to understand and difficult for some people to grasp, because they think that they're actually responding to right now. But often we're not responding to right now. An emotional trigger is that trigger that elicits a significant emotional response, anger, frustration, almost sometimes violence, if we are not careful, if we are not aware of what's going on, okay? So that's what an emotional trigger is. It's evoked. It's a strong emotion that comes up as a result of something that's happening. The importance of recognizing these is that they can come in lots of different places. They can come in lots of different spaces. It's essential to understand them, because if we don't understand them, then they can derail us. They can derail our progress, because we actually think, and the people around us believe, that we are responding to the here and now, when in fact we're just responding to something else. Now, the trick for these triggers, and another reason that it's important to understand them, is that if we believe that the trigger, or we believe that our response is based on what just happened, then we end up trying to deal with, handle what is right in front of us. And we never take the time to look back and see that this is not something that's happening in the here and now, but it's something that's happening from before, and going and trying to deal with that situation. So you understand the importance? I was going to say the treatment, but the handling of it, the management of it, actually occurs by dealing with the previous thing, the thing that's unresolved, and not necessarily the thing, the catalyst that took us back there, that thing that just happened. Now, it may be that we've still got to deal with that, but if we are going to get out from under this emotional trigger, then we've got to make sure that we're dealing with the past. Right? Does that make sense? I hope so. And by the way, I didn't tell you, I'm actually out at one of our shopping centers that's being redesigned. When I was in college here, this was the place we came, and now it's being redeveloped. We got apartments going up everywhere. We've got stores and all kinds of things that are happening. Okay, so how do we identify emotional triggers? That is going to be key. We identify emotional triggers by we do some self-reflection. Now, this takes us being emotionally intelligent and being mindful. So emotional intelligence and being mindful, because we reflect on recent things that have happened. Whenever you're faced with anxiety, with anger, frustration, that is unusual, that seems more pronounced than we would have expected it to be, then we've got to say, hey, what really is going on here? Remember, we talked about the COPE model, and the COPE model talks about clarifying, right? That was the C. And often we have to do a lot of clarifications here, right? So what really is happening? Why was I so mad? Why was I so frustrated? Why was I so fearful? Right? So we got to reflect on what's been happening, and think about what was going on just before that feeling occurred. That allows us to then put some of that in perspective, because now we know, okay, this is not just me responding to this thing. Something is actually going on. Something actually happened that caused this. And then we've got to understand some of the most common triggers that happens in our daily lives. And these can come in lots of different forms, right? So these can come in rejection. It can come with failure, feelings of inadequacy, criticism. And these situations we'll run into often, or frequently, let me say not often, we'll run into them frequently. And if we've been doing a good job of understanding, for instance, in our case, that a setback is not the end of the world, and we're looking for opportunities, but understanding that and then having a significantly over-the-top response should help us say, wait a minute, something different just happened. Something just happened that may have triggered me. And so I'm looking to see how do I get better, and how do I deal with that situation so that I don't just think that it's something that's happening right now and try to deal with that, as opposed to thinking back to saying, okay, where really did that come from? Okay. All right. And then, so understanding common triggers, and then recording and analyzing. In everything that we do, whenever we want to change something, having a record. We'll go down this way to get away from some of the noise. Having a record, having some documentation, having a journal, something that allows us to go back and objectively look at that data, allows us to make decisions and allows us to set ourselves up for success. Because if we don't, then it's hard to be objective. It's hard to know what to do, how to evaluate. So make sure that you are keeping a journal. and that you're analyzing. Okay, so I want to pause here for a minute, and I want to make a plug for journaling. We'll talk more about journaling. It'll come up again and again and again. So let me just make a point here. So as we're going through this process, you've heard me say document, record, keep a success journal. Here we're talking about journaling again. And I want you to understand that I don't want you journaling just because in this instance, right? So it's not a, oh, I'm going to do this right now kind of thing. But journaling is something that you want to be doing on a continual basis so that when you have to refer to it, when you have to look back and you have to say, hey, what was going on? That is something that's recorded, right? Data that's not captured is of no use. So right now, even before you have started evaluating something, even before you found yourself in the space where you've got to look at a particular situation to figure out the triggering in it, even before you do all that, I want you to start journaling. Okay, so get a journal, and on a daily basis, I want you to sit down and I want you to start documenting what was going on that day, how the day went, so that it is a process that you continually do. And if you start that now, when you find places or spaces or tools that require you to now look at documentation, it is not a foreign concept. And then you actually have data that you can look back at that is actually relatively objective, right? Because you're not recording it because of a particular thing. You're just recording it because that's what you do. Does that make sense? All right. Just wanted to make a plug there for journaling. It is so important. And I will share with you some of how I journal at some point. All right. So let's see. Okay, so that was journaling. So how do we manage emotional triggers? How do we manage emotional triggers? And I'm going to turn around so you can see where I am. So this is another kind of little pond. And over there, you may recognize that. You may have one in your area. That's the Top Golf that we have here. There's a REI co-op that's right behind me on this side. And I didn't show you, but we passed Dave and Buster's a little while ago. Now, when we walk around, what I'll do is I think I'll walk around that way so you can see the rock climbing. I think it's over there. But just a nice area for us for me to walk. We come out here sometimes to go to the Top Golf, bring my son and some of his friends out. And also there's a Whole Foods? Anyway, one of those stores over there. Okay, so how do we manage? So number one, we want to learn to develop coping strategies. Man, look at that. Fundamentals are fundamentals. Fundamentals are fundamentals. So what are your coping for each identified trigger? What is a coping mechanism that you're going to use to handle it? Coping mechanisms require practice. Coping mechanisms require practice. How many times did I say that? That's twice. One more time. Coping mechanisms require practice. And so let me give you an example. So at my house right now, if you go into my garage, you'll find a toolbox. Well, a couple of toolboxes. And you'll find places, some things on the wall that I'm hanging tools. And in order for me to get them, I've got to go in the garage, got to find the tool, take it off the wall, take it out the toolbox or whatever. But I bet you if you went in there, looked in one of those toolboxes, you'll find a chisel. Anybody know what a chisel is? Yeah? So I'm gonna tell you, honestly, there aren't many things in my life right now that call for a chisel. Like, I don't like use a chisel every day. It's not like I wake up in the morning and say, okay, let me make sure I pack my chisel to take it with me. But if I need a chisel, the chisel is there. And that's the idea behind these techniques and these tools that we are learning. It's not that you're using them every day. It's not that you're using them all the time. But it is that if you need it, it's there. And you have taken the time to understand it, to know that it's there, to know how to activate it, to know how to apply it, to know how to evaluate it, so that when needed, you go into the toolbox, you pull it out, you use it, and when you're done, you put it back. So when I need a chisel at the house, I don't want to be running out to my big box store to try to find one. All right? I want to be able to go in my garage, get into the toolbox, and pick it up. Now, there are things that I do have to go out and buy. But I want to make sure that my toolbox is as complete as reasonably possible. Right? So there are some tools that I want you to begin learning, and we'll talk more about that as we move through each of these days. Okay, so number one, develop coping strategies. Okay, deep breathing, meditation, yoga, mindfulness, all of those things that we've talked about before. Number two, you want to develop boundaries. Develop boundaries. We talked about boundaries yesterday in our discussion. And boundaries are those things that you have put in place that say, okay, this is my safe space. I want you to listen. These boundaries are things that you have put in place, that you've said, this is my safe space. And people don't get to violate your boundaries just because they think they should violate them, right? So they're your boundaries. Now you can adjust your boundaries. You can change the shape of the boundary. You can change the distance of the boundary, but the boundary is yours. And you get to make that decision. One of the places where we get frustrations is when we don't stick to our boundaries. One of the places we get triggered is because there is a boundary that we've set, because we've set that boundary to help us avoid the pain of whatever that is, that memory, that thing, and we allow people to violate it without dealing with it, and then we become triggered. Okay? So you want to set boundaries. If specific people or situations consistently trigger you, consider setting a boundary that limits your interaction, limits the access that that person has to you, limits your interaction in that situation. Okay? Now, there are some things, and let's just be real, right? There are some people that have done some things that have caused trauma to us, and while we forgive them, that doesn't mean they have to have access to us. I want you to remember that. Forgiveness does not guarantee access. Just because I said I've forgiven you, just because I've removed myself from that situation, doesn't mean that that situation or that person gets to come into and have access to me, come into my circle and have access to me. Okay, just remember that. I was trying to see if I can get by this rock climbing wall over here. Okay, so forgiveness does not guarantee access. Then there are so many things that are going to happen to us, and I want to make sure that you are being mindful, that you are becoming emotionally intelligent. Emotional intelligence means being able to know, being aware of your emotions, being aware of the emotions of those people around you, and being able to use that for your benefit. So that's the rock climbing wall. It's emotional intelligence. So you're mindful. When you are mindful, then you are able to see how you are feeling in a particular situation. Now, a lot of times we are feeling things. We have an emotion that's being generated in us, and we feel it. We sense that something's going on, but we ignore it because we are not being emotionally intelligent. We're not using our mindfulness. We're not being aware of the places where our where that causes problems for us. Okay, so I want to make sure that you are practicing mindfulness. That is taking time to sit and listen to yourself. That you have well, we haven't talked about it yet, but you have a daily practice for allowing yourself to be still and to listen to your body and listen to how the body is responding to you and responding to your surroundings. When we become mindful, when we learn how to use our emotional intelligence, then we are able to spot, we are able to identify triggers, and we're able to head those off before they happen and deal with them. Now, there are going to be some triggers that are going to come, and they're unexpected, they're out of the blue, they're out, right? That's going to happen. So we're not trying to eliminate triggers altogether. What we're trying to do is we're trying to minimize their impact on us, okay? And then I want you to know that there is no substitute for community. There's no substitute for community. Your community, the people that you've built around you, the people that you've created, that accountability group, that accountability partner, they will be a significant force in your life. And if you do a good job of surrounding yourself with accountability, then you set yourself up for success. But you want to look for developed support. There are so many of us that need to talk to people. I'll tell you, I have in my office, when I'm dealing with patients, many times when patients walk into the room, I'll say to them, hey, welcome, come, glad that you're here. So what's been going on in your life? And they'll say to me, oh, you don't want to know. What they don't realize is actually I do want to know. That's why I ask. Because I'm well aware that we can sit and we can talk about a disease process. We can talk about thyroid, we can talk about diabetes, we can talk about weight, we can talk about the adrenals, pituitary, thyroid cancer, whatever it is that they're coming to me for, we can sit and talk about that. But the impact of what's going on in their life on that disease process is profound. And so I understand that. So when I'm asking about what's going on in your life, it's not just a casual what's going on in your life. I want to know, right? Because I'm interested in the person as a person, but I'm also interested in the person as a clinician. Okay? So many times the issue that's going on with them has nothing to do with the disease process and has everything to do with the rest of life. And so I'll say to them,
Time 27 minutes 47 seconds. Total distance 1.0 miles. Average pace 27 minutes 47 seconds per mile. Split pace 27 minutes 47 seconds per mile.
So you heard the readout there. So I'll say to them, we need to get you into some counseling, get you someone to talk to. And they'll say, no, yeah, I'll deal with it. I'm handling it. I said, how are you handling it? I said, well, I just won't get stressed. I just won't, whatever it is. And I want you to understand right now that there is no shame in saying I need counseling. There's no shame in saying I need to talk to somebody. There's no shame in saying I need somebody to help me process this. In fact, I encourage you to do that, because triggers are very tricky. Like I said, it's not just what's going on right now. They're transporting you in time to a different place, to something that is unresolved, something that you've not dealt with. And so often we need someone who's skilled at helping people to be able to go through that process. So make sure that you're doing that. Okay? So get support. Get support. How many times did I say that? Let me say it again. Get support. All right. Yeah, I think I've beat that one. Okay. That's why I love also these challenges. I love this community, because when you do things together, there is a bond that's built that solidifies and help us know that, okay, there's a bond that comes from going through something together. So 100-day walk to consistency. So you all that are going through this are doing something that no one else is doing right now. And so you are in the process of building a community. And so I want you to lean on that community, right? Send messages. I want you to be involved in the community. Make sure you're using the workbooks. Make sure you're doing the challenges. All of that, okay? All right. So now that we've talked about that, we never leave without a challenge. Are you ready? You ready for the challenge? Okay, so here's the challenge. And I'm gonna walk over this way so I can get away from some of that noise. So by the way, we made a big circle around the shopping center. All right, so here's the challenge. I want you to identify a trigger. All right, identify a trigger. And you want to choose one emotional trigger that you've identified. Something that seems to continually be an issue for you. Number 2, I want you to write it down, right? So remember we're documenting, because you're writing in your journal anyway. I want you to think about a strategy on how you're going to deal with it. Think about a strategy. So you'll have to look, on how am I going to deal with this. Use one of the coping strategies you've developed when you encounter this trigger. All right, use one of those. And then I want you to reflect on the outcome. So identify a trigger, write it down. Think about a strategy that you can use, right? Use one of the ones that you've been learning. I want you to use it in that situation. And then I want you to reflect by writing in your journal, or processing first, and then writing in your journal what the response was. How did it make you feel? How did it go with using the strategy? And how did that situation turn out? That is really how we know what's going on, right? So we've got to put it into action. A plan without action is just some stuff on the paper. So whatever you develop, I want you to put that in action. I want you to take some action that sets you up for success. Now, here's what I want you to know. Whenever you first start implementing this, it may not go the way you anticipated. You may still get triggered. You may still get all the emotions that come. That doesn't mean that it failed. That just means that we've got to practice. All right? That just means that we've got to do it again and again and again until we get it. It does work, but it takes practice. The first time you do it, don't get frustrated because it didn't quite go the way you did. Each time you do it, your brain is now saying, okay, we're a person, we are people that don't allow triggers to derail us. That's the story that we're creating. And each time we get more confidence if we're consistent, and each time we get more confidence, we become more consistent, and each time we become more consistent, we set ourselves up for greater and greater success. Yes? All right. Well, oh man, I am always so excited when I get to hang out with you, when we get to come and we get to talk. Maybe I should move back a little bit. I walked all the way back up here where the truck is. So I'm gonna walk back this way. See, I'm gonna turn around. See, the truck is there. And I thought I was heading back in this direction and I wouldn't be able to hear it, but I can actually hear it. I'm gonna step back so maybe it's drowned out in the background. But that's okay. That's all right. So understanding and managing emotional triggers is essential to our success. It's essential for the things that we're going to be doing. It's essential for allowing us to be consistent. By recognizing these triggers, by being able to manage them, by finding strategies to prevent them from derailing us, we are setting ourselves up for success. We're setting ourselves up for consistency, and we're setting ourselves up to be the person that we are designing, the new version of ourselves. Hey, every day we're building, every day another piece to the puzzle. Every day we're going, and every day we're getting stronger. Hey, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. Thank you for joining me for my 100-day walk to consistency. Join me tomorrow for day number 25. We'll see you on the walk.